The ship shuddered as it crossed into the forbidden zone, and Captain Marcus Cole gripped the armrests of his command chair with white knuckles. Around him, the bridge crew worked in tense silence, their faces lit by the red warning lights that bathed everything in an angry glow. Through the main view screen, he could see it now, the thing that had swallowed 3 alien fleets and countless research vessels. The black hole known as Terminus sat at the heart of a dying star system, a perfect circle of absolute darkness that seemed to drink in all light and hope. Marcus was 42 years old, with gray streaking his dark hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of too many battles and not enough sleep. He had been a soldier, then a captain, then something more. Now he was humanity's last hope, sent on a mission that every species in the Galactic Federation had called suicide. "Captain, we are receiving transmission from Federation Command," said Lieutenant Kim, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Put it through," Marcus said. The view screen flickered, and the face of High Commander Zeltrix appeared. The Villani was tall and thin, with blue skin and large golden eyes that now held a mixture of concern and resignation. "Captain Cole, our sensors indicate you have entered the gravity well of Terminus. I must ask you one final time to reconsider. No ship has ever returned from beyond this point." Marcus stood up slowly, his boots heavy on the deck. "With respect, High Commander, that is exactly why we must continue. Your people have lost 4,000 souls to this thing. The Kratani lost twice that. Even the mighty Zorathian Empire sent their best warriors and none came back. If humanity turns away now, we prove what every species in the Federation secretly believes, that we are young, foolish, and unworthy of our place among the stars." Zeltrix's golden eyes softened. "There is no shame in wisdom, Captain. The black hole cannot be fought, it cannot be reasoned with, it simply consumes." "Then maybe it is time someone gave it indigestion," Marcus replied with a grin that did not quite reach his eyes. The transmission ended and Marcus turned to face his crew. There were 53 humans aboard the Starship Defiance, each one a volunteer who had known the risks. They had families back on Earth, lovers, children, lives they might never return to, and yet they had come anyway. "All hands," Marcus said, his voice carrying through the ship's intercom. "This is the captain. In 20 minutes we will begin our approach to Terminus. I will not lie to you. The odds are against us. Every calculation says we should not survive. But I have learned something in my years among the stars, something the other species do not understand about humanity. We are not defined by the odds. We are not slaves to probability. When the universe tells us something is impossible, we smile and ask it to hold our beer." A ripple of nervous laughter passed through the bridge. "Today we face the darkness itself. We face a force that has terrified civilizations older than our species, and we will show them what humans are made of, not because we are stronger or smarter, but because we are too stubborn to know when to quit. Stations, everyone, let us make some history." The crew moved with renewed purpose, fear transformed into determination. Marcus watched them with pride swelling in his chest. These were ordinary people, teachers and engineers and farmers who had left everything behind to wear the uniform. They were the best of humanity, not because they felt no fear, but because they acted despite it. "Captain," said Chief Engineer Tanaka from his station, "the gravitational forces are increasing faster than our models predicted. The hull is starting to stress. Can we compensate?" Tanaka's fingers flew across his console. "I am rerouting power from non-essential systems. We have maybe 30 minutes before the structural integrity becomes critical." Marcus nodded grimly. 30 minutes. It was not much time to solve a mystery that had baffled the galaxy's greatest minds for centuries. The black hole Terminus had appeared seemingly from nowhere 200 years ago, drifting into a populated star system and consuming 3 inhabited planets before anyone could evacuate. Since then, it had moved with an almost deliberate purpose, as if hunting for prey. The Federation had sent probe after probe, each one swallowed without returning any data. They had tried weapons, from nuclear missiles to antimatter bombs, and watched them disappear without effect. They had even attempted to communicate with it, thinking perhaps some intelligence lurked within that cosmic maw. Nothing had worked. But Marcus had noticed something that the alien scientists had missed, a pattern in the destruction. The black hole did not simply consume, it chose. It moved toward population centers, toward areas of high activity and energy use. It was not just a natural phenomenon, it was hungry. "Lieutenant Kim, begin broadcasting on all frequencies," Marcus ordered. "Standard first contact protocols." Kim stared at him. "Sir, you want to talk to a black hole?" "I want to talk to whatever is inside it," Marcus corrected. "Something has been guiding Terminus for 2 centuries. Something intelligent. And intelligent beings can be reasoned with, or at least distracted." The broadcast began, a simple message of greeting and peaceful intent translated into every known language. For long minutes, there was only silence and the groaning of the ship's hull as the gravitational forces increased. Then the viewscreen flickered. An image appeared, ghostly and distorted, fighting against the interference of the black hole's massive gravity. It showed a face, or something like a face. Features that shifted and changed, sometimes humanoid, sometimes alien, sometimes something else entirely. When it spoke, the voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, resonating through the ship's structure itself. "You are different from the others," the voice said. "They came with weapons and fear. You come with words and curiosity." Marcus stepped forward, his heart pounding but his voice steady. "We are humans. We come from a small planet called Earth, and we are here to understand, not to fight." "Understanding is dangerous," the entity replied. "Those who understand too much often wish they had remained ignorant." "We will take that risk." There was a pause, a moment of consideration that seemed to stretch into eternity. Then the entity spoke again, and its words changed everything. "Very well, human. You wish to understand Terminus. Then you must see what lies at its heart. But be warned, what waits inside has destroyed civilizations far older than yours. It has consumed gods and turned empires to dust. Are you prepared to face true darkness?" Marcus looked at his crew, at the faces of the men and women who had trusted him with their lives. He saw fear there, yes, but also something else. Hope, defiance, the stubborn human refusal to surrender. "We are ready," he said. The darkness swallowed them whole. The transition was unlike anything Marcus had experienced. There was no sense of movement, no passage of time, just a sudden shift from the familiar reality of the bridge to something else entirely. The viewscreen went blank, then filled with an image that made his mind struggle to process what it was seeing. They were inside the black hole, or at least inside something that existed beyond the event horizon. The space around them was vast and impossible, filled with structures that defied geometry. Towers of crystallized light stretched toward infinity in all directions. Rivers of pure energy flowed through the void, carrying the debris of 1,000 destroyed civilizations. "By all the gods," whispered Lieutenant Kim, "this is not possible." "Apparently, the universe did not get that memo," Marcus replied, fighting to keep his voice calm. "Tanaka, ship status." "All systems nominal, Captain. Gravitational forces have normalized. It is as if we are in normal space, but the readings make no sense. We should not exist right now." Marcus understood what he meant. According to physics, anything that crossed the event horizon of a black hole would be stretched into atoms and crushed into the singularity. Yet here they were, alive and intact. Either their understanding of physics was wrong, or something was keeping them alive. "The entity," he said, "it brought us here deliberately. It wants us to see something." As if responding to his words, the ship began to move without any input from the helm. It drifted through the impossible landscape, past the ruins of alien vessels and the frozen corpses of creatures Marcus could not name. He saw the remnants of the Zorathian war fleet, mighty dreadnoughts reduced to twisted wreckage. He saw Cretani science ships, their delicate sensor arrays still extended as if trying to understand what had killed them. And he saw countless others, species he did not recognize, civilizations that had risen and fallen before humanity had learned to make fire. They all came to fight, the entity's voice echoed through the ship. They came with their weapons and their arrogance, believing they could conquer the infinite. They learned otherwise. And you killed them for that? Marcus asked, anger creeping into his voice. I did not kill them. They killed themselves. Their fear and aggression triggered the defense mechanisms of this place. Terminus is not a destroyer by choice. It is a guardian, a lock on a door that must never be opened. But those who approach with violence are met with violence in return. Then what is behind the door? Marcus demanded. What are you guarding against? The ship stopped moving. Around them, the crystal towers seemed to pulse with anticipation, as if the entire structure was holding its breath. I will show you, the entity said. But you must understand that once you see, you cannot unsee. The knowledge will change you as it changed me. Are you prepared for that burden? Marcus thought of Earth, of the billions of humans who looked up at the stars and dreamed of the future. He thought of his wife Sarah, waiting back home with their daughter, not knowing if he would ever return. He thought of all the species in the Federation, the ones who had welcomed humanity with open arms and the ones who had looked down on them as primitive newcomers. I am prepared, he said. The universe shifted again, and Marcus Cole saw the truth. Beyond the black hole, beyond the barriers of space and time, there was another realm, a dimension of pure chaos where the laws of physics were mere suggestions and reality itself was malleable. And within that realm, something slept, something vast beyond comprehension, older than the stars themselves, filled with a hunger that made the black hole look like a gentle kiss. It was not alive in any way Marcus could understand. It was more like a force, a cosmic entropy given form, a need to consume and destroy that had existed since before the Big Bang. If it ever woke, if it ever broke through the barriers that contained it, it would unravel creation itself. The old hunger, the entity said. It came before light, before matter, before anything you would recognize as existence. The black holes are not destroyers. They are seals placed by beings who understood the danger. Terminus is the last seal, the final lock on the prison, but the lock is weakening. Weakening? Marcus's blood ran cold. Why? Because the universe is dying, the entity replied. Entropy increases, energy dissipates, and the barriers grow thin. Each civilization that attacks Terminus drains more power from the seal. Each weapon fired, each attempt to destroy, weakens the lock that holds back the old hunger. I have tried to warn them, tried to show them the danger, but they see only the black hole. They see only something to be conquered. Marcus understood now. He understood why Terminus moved toward populated areas, not to consume, but to warn. It was trying to communicate, trying to make the civilizations of the galaxy understand the danger they faced. But they had been too afraid, too aggressive to listen. What can we do? He asked. How do we stop the weakening? The entity was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was filled with something Marcus could only describe as hope. You are the first to ask that question. Every other species demanded to know how to destroy me, how to defeat me, how to prove their superiority. You are the first to ask how to help. Perhaps humanity truly is different. Perhaps you are the ones I have been waiting for. The ship began to move again, carrying them deeper into the heart of Terminus, toward answers that would change the fate of the galaxy. The chamber they entered was vast beyond measure, a hollow space at the center of the black hole where reality bent in impossible ways. Floating in the middle was a structure that Marcus could only describe as a machine, though it was like no machine he had ever seen. It pulsed with energy, streams of light flowing through crystalline conduits, and at its heart was something that looked almost like a human heart, beating with slow, steady rhythm. The anchor, the entity explained. It was built by the first ones, a species so old that even their name has been forgotten. They understood the old hunger. They sacrificed everything to create the seals, to lock away the darkness and give the universe a chance to flourish. But they could not sustain the anchor forever. They needed successors, beings who would understand the burden and accept it willingly. And no one has accepted, Marcus asked. No one has been given the chance, until now. Marcus felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. He looked at the anchor, at the heart of the device that held back cosmic annihilation, and he understood what the entity was asking. "You want us to become the new guardians," he said. "You want humanity to take on the burden." "Not alone. The anchor requires a partnership, a connection between the guardian and the species that supports them. One human must bond with the anchor, must become part of the seal itself, but the rest of your species must provide the energy, the will to live and grow and dream. The old hunger feeds on entropy, on death and decay. Life fights back against it, pushes back the darkness with every heartbeat and every breath. And if I bond with the anchor, you will become something more than human. You will be connected to every living being in the universe, feeling their joys and sorrows, their triumphs and failures. You will be immortal in a sense, but you will also be bound. You cannot leave Terminus. You cannot return to the life you knew. You will be the guardian now and forever." Marcus thought of Sarah. He thought of his daughter Emma, only 7 years old, who had cried when he left for this mission and made him promise to come home. He thought of all the things he would miss, birthdays and holidays, her first day of school and her graduation, her wedding and the grandchildren he would never meet. But he also thought of what would happen if he said no. The anchor was failing, and without a new guardian, the seal would break. The old hunger would consume Earth, consume humanity, consume everything that had ever existed or ever would exist. His family would die, not just die but be unmade, erased from reality as if they had never been. "I need to talk to my crew," he said finally. The entity nodded, or at least the face on the view screen made a gesture that suggested understanding. "Take the time you need, but understand that the anchor grows weaker with each passing moment. You do not have long." Marcus walked through the corridors of the Defiance, his footsteps echoing in the strange silence. His crew gathered in the mess hall, their faces a mixture of confusion and concern. He told them everything he had learned, everything the entity had shown him, and watched as understanding and horror dawned in their eyes. "It has to be me," Marcus said. "I am the captain. This is my responsibility." "Like hell it is," said Commander Tors, his second in command. "We all volunteered for this mission. We all knew we might not come back. If someone has to stay behind, it should be decided fairly." "Tors is right," added Lieutenant Kim. "We should draw lots or vote or something. You cannot just sacrifice yourself because you feel responsible." Marcus looked at them, at these brave men and women who had followed him into the impossible. He felt a surge of love for them, for the stubborn, defiant, wonderful species he belonged to. "You are right," he admitted. "But there is something else to consider. The entity said the guardian needs to be connected to the species, to feel their joys and sorrows. That means the guardian needs to love humanity, truly love it with all its flaws and failings. They need to believe in what we can become, not just what we are." He paused, searching for the right words. "I have spent my whole life among humans and aliens. I have seen the worst of our species and the best. I have watched us kill and steal and lie, and I have watched us sacrifice and forgive and love. And through it all, I have never stopped believing that we are worth saving. Not because we are perfect, but because we are always trying to be better. That is what the anchor needs. That is what I can give it." The crew was silent. Then one by one they saluted. It was not a military gesture, not really. It was something more, a recognition of sacrifice, an acknowledgement of love. "Give them hell, Captain," Tors said, his voice thick. "I intend to," Marcus replied. The bonding process was not painful, not exactly. It was more like dissolving, like becoming part of something larger than himself. Marcus felt the anchor reach into his mind, his soul, his very essence, and he felt himself reach back. He was connected now, not just to the machine, but to every living being in the universe. He felt Earth, billions of lives burning bright with hope and fear and love. He felt the Federation, trillions of aliens going about their daily lives, unaware of the danger they had faced. He felt the Defiance, his crew preparing to leave, carrying his message back to humanity. And he felt the old hunger pressing against the seal, testing its strength. It was vast and cold and terribly patient. It had waited since before time itself, and it would wait forever if it had to. But now it sensed something new, a strength in the seal that had not been there before. Marcus smiled. He was afraid, of course he was afraid. But fear was just another feeling, another connection to the life he was protecting. He wrapped himself in it, embraced it, and transformed it into something else. Into Defiance. Years passed on Earth, measured in days and months and seasons. The Defiance returned home, carrying with it the story of Captain Marcus Cole and his sacrifice. At first, few believed. The idea that a black hole was actually a seal against cosmic horror seemed like something from a fevered dream. But as time went on, as scientists studied the data and researchers confirmed the impossible readings, understanding grew. Humanity had not just survived an encounter with a black hole. They had become guardians of the universe itself. The news spread through the Federation like wildfire. Species that had looked down on humans as primitive newcomers now saw them in a new light. The Zorathians sent ambassadors to Earth, seeking to understand how such a young species had accomplished what their mighty warriors could not. The Cretani offered their best scientists to study the phenomenon and learn from it. Even the reclusive Velani emerged from their contemplation to acknowledge humanity's achievement. Sarah Cole stood at the memorial they had built for Marcus, a simple stone structure overlooking the ocean he had loved so much. Emma, no longer 7 but 17 now, stood beside her, tall and strong and more like her father every day. "Is he really still out there?" Emma asked, as she did every year on the anniversary. Sarah looked up at the stars, at the point in the sky where Terminus lurked, invisible but never forgotten. "He is," she said. "He is watching over all of us, feeling our happiness and our sadness, our victories and our defeats. And he is proud of you, Emma, so proud." Emma smiled, but there were tears in her eyes. "I want to go there someday. I want to see him even if he cannot see me." "Maybe you will," Sarah said. "Maybe someday humanity will find a way to visit him, to talk to him, to let him know he is not forgotten. But for now, the best thing we can do is live fully and bravely and kindly. That is what gives him strength. That is what pushes back the darkness." In the heart of Terminus, Marcus felt them. He felt Sarah's love, steady and eternal. He felt Emma's ambition, burning bright as any star. He felt humanity spreading through the galaxy, building and creating and dreaming of better futures. And he felt something else, something that made his heart, or what served as his heart now, swell with pride. Humanity was changing, not just growing in numbers or technology, but changing fundamentally. They were becoming guardians themselves, not of the anchor, but of the smaller things. They were protecting species that could not protect themselves. They were healing worlds that had been damaged by war and pollution. They were spreading hope and kindness wherever they went, not because it was easy, but because it was right. The old hunger pressed against the seal as it always did, testing for weakness. But now it found something unexpected. The seal was not just holding, it was growing stronger. Marcus had been right. Humanity was worth saving, not because they were perfect, but because they were always trying to be better. And that constant striving, that refusal to accept the darkness, that stubborn, beautiful defiance was more powerful than any weapon or shield. The entity that had guided him here, the ancient guardian who had watched civilizations rise and fall for millions of years, spoke to him across the vast distances of space and time. You were right, Marcus Cole. Humanity is different. They do not just accept the burden, they transform it into something beautiful. They are just getting started, Marcus replied. Wait until you see what they do next. In the chamber of the anchor, surrounded by the crystallized light and flowing energy of a power source older than the stars, Marcus Cole smiled. He was alone, in a sense, separated from everyone he had ever loved by an impossible distance. But he was also more connected than he had ever been, part of a web of life that spanned the entire universe. And he was not afraid anymore. Fear had been transformed just as the anchor had transformed him. It had become something else, something stronger. It had become hope. On Earth, in schools and homes and gathering places across the planet, humans told the story of the captain who had defied a black hole. They told it to their children, who told it to their children, and so on through the generations. It became myth and legend and something more, a reminder of what humanity could achieve when they chose courage over fear. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, a guardian watched over them, feeling their triumphs and their failures, their joys and their sorrows. He was part of them now, and they were part of him, bound together by something stronger than gravity, stronger than physics, stronger than death itself. Love, stubborn, defiant, impossible love. The old hunger would never stop pressing against the seal. It was patient and eternal, a force that had existed before creation and would exist after the last star burned out. But so was the seal now, strengthened by the bond between a human guardian and a species that refused to surrender. The universe was vast and cold and filled with dangers beyond imagination. But at its heart, protected by the sacrifice of a single human, there was a warmth that could never be extinguished. Marcus Cole had defied a black hole, and in doing so, he had shown the universe what humanity was capable of. The stars would remember. The decades that followed Marcus Cole's sacrifice became known as the era of Guardians. Humanity embraced their new role with characteristic enthusiasm, throwing themselves into the task of protecting and nurturing the galaxy. Research stations were built near Terminus, not to study how to destroy it, but to understand how to strengthen it. Scientists from 100 species worked together, united by a common purpose that had eluded them for millennia. Emma Cole grew up hearing stories of her father, but she was determined to be more than just the daughter of a legend. She studied astrophysics at the finest universities on Earth and in the Federation. She trained as a pilot, as an engineer, as a diplomat. And on her 30th birthday, she stood on the bridge of a research vessel, looking out at the black hole that held her father captive. "We are receiving transmission from Terminus," said her communications officer. Emma's heart raced. Communication with the anchor was possible but rare, requiring massive amounts of energy and precise timing. She had sent requests for years, hoping for a chance to speak with her father. Now, finally, it was happening. The view screen flickered and she saw him. He was different, of course, his form shifting and strange, but she recognized the eyes. They were the same eyes that had looked at her with love when she was a child, the same eyes that had smiled at her from across the breakfast table. "Emma," Marcus said, and his voice was like music, resonating with harmonics that touched something deep in her soul. "You grew up." "I did," she replied, fighting back tears. "I became a scientist, Dad. I wanted to understand what you did, why it worked, how we can help." Marcus smiled, and the stars seemed to brighten in response. "I always knew you would do something amazing. Tell me everything." They talked for hours, father and daughter connected across the impossible distance. Emma told him about Earth, about the changes humanity had made, about the alliances they had formed and the enemies they had defeated. She told him about her mother, about the memorial they visited every year, about the way Sarah still looked up at the stars and smiled. Marcus listened, drinking in every word. He felt Emma's emotions, her pride and her sadness, her determination and her love. She was everything he had hoped she would become and more. "There is something I need to tell you," Emma said finally. "Something the scientists have discovered." "Tell me." The anchor was designed for multiple guardians. The first ones knew that no single being could sustain it forever, no matter how strong their connection. They built it to be expanded, to accept new guardians who would share the burden and strengthen the seal. Marcus felt something stir in his ancient heart. "You want to join me?" "Not me," Emma said. "Not just me. Humanity has been preparing for this for decades. We have found volunteers, people who understand the burden and want to accept it. People who love humanity, who believe in what we can become, just like you did." "But the sacrifice," Marcus protested. "The loneliness, the separation from everything they know." "You taught us something, Dad. You showed us that sacrifice is not a tragedy. It is a gift. These volunteers are not giving up their lives. They are transforming them into something greater. They are becoming guardians." Marcus felt the anchor pulse with anticipation, as if it had been waiting for this moment. The entity that had guided him here spoke, its voice filled with wonder. "They understand," it said. "They truly understand. In all the millennia I have watched, no species has ever grasped this truth so quickly. Humanity is not just different, they are evolved. They are the next step." Emma sent the first volunteer through the barrier of Terminus, a young woman named Yuki Tanaka, descended from the same Tanaka who had served as Marcus's chief engineer. Yuki dissolved into the anchor just as Marcus had, her consciousness merging with the seal, her love for humanity strengthening the barriers against the old hunger. And she was not alone. More volunteers followed, from every nation on Earth and every species in the Federation. The Zorathians sent their wisest elders. The Cretani sent their most compassionate healers. Even the Velani emerged from their contemplation to offer guardians of their own. The seal grew stronger with each new addition, a network of consciousness spanning the galaxy. The guardians were not lonely anymore. They were connected to each other, sharing thoughts and feelings, supporting each other through the endless vigil. And they were connected to the living, feeling the pulse of trillions of lives, drawing strength from every birth and every sunrise. The old hunger felt the change. It pressed against the seal, testing its new strength, and for the first time since the beginning of existence, it hesitated. The seal was not just holding, it was growing. It was becoming something that even the primordial darkness could not overcome. Marcus felt his daughter's consciousness join the network, and his joy was indescribable. Emma had found her purpose, just as he had found his. They were together again, not in the physical sense, but in something deeper and more permanent. "I love you, Dad," Emma said, her thoughts intertwining with his. "I love you too, Em. I always have, I always will." The network of guardians stretched across the galaxy, a web of light and love that pushed back against the darkness. They were no longer alone. They were legion. And humanity, the young species that had once been looked down upon as primitive newcomers, had led the way. 1,000 years passed, measured not in days or months but in the slow turning of galaxies. Humanity had spread across the stars, colonizing worlds that their ancestors had only dreamed of. They had evolved and changed, becoming something new while remaining fundamentally the same. They were still stubborn, still defiant, still convinced that they could make the universe a better place if they just tried hard enough. And at the heart of their civilization, the seal endured. The network of guardians had grown to include millions of beings, each one adding their strength to the barrier against the old hunger. They had become a new kind of consciousness, neither individual nor collective but something in between. They shared thoughts and feelings, memories and dreams, while maintaining their distinct identities. Marcus Cole was still there at the center of it all. He had been the first human guardian, the one who had shown the way. His consciousness had expanded and evolved, becoming something vast and ancient, but he had never lost the core of who he was. He was still a father, a husband, a friend. He was still stubborn and defiant, still convinced that courage was stronger than fear. Emma was there too, merged with the network but still recognizably herself. She had spent centuries studying the anchor, understanding its mysteries, finding new ways to strengthen it. Her work had saved countless lives, prevented disasters that would have unraveled the seal, pushed back the darkness one discovery at a time. And they were not alone. Yuki Tanaka was there, and the Zorathian elders and the Kratani healers. The Villani philosophers had joined, bringing their wisdom and their patience. Species that had not existed when Marcus first bonded with the anchor had since evolved, grown, and contributed their own guardians. The old hunger still pressed against the seal, as it always had and always would. It was eternal and patient, a force that could not be destroyed or reasoned with, but it was also no longer growing. The network of guardians had achieved something that the first ones had only dreamed of. They had reached equilibrium. They had balanced the darkness with light. The entity that had first guided Marcus spoke to the assembled guardians, its voice filled with something that might have been pride. When I became the guardian of this place, I was alone. I watched civilizations rise and fall, saw countless species reach for the stars only to be consumed by their own fear and aggression. I believed that the pattern would continue forever, that the seal would eventually fail, that the old hunger would consume everything. I was wrong. Humanity showed me another way, not through strength or intelligence, but through something simpler and more powerful. They showed me that love is stronger than fear, that hope is stronger than despair, that the will to live and grow and dream is the most powerful force in the universe. You have done what I thought was impossible. You have become guardians not just of this seal, but of each other. You have created a network of consciousness that spans the galaxy, a web of light that pushes back the darkness. And you have proven that the universe is worth saving. Marcus felt the words resonate through the network, touching every guardian, stirring something deep in their shared consciousness. He thought of Sarah, long dead now but never forgotten, her love still a warm presence in his memories. He thought of Earth, the small blue planet that had given birth to a species of stubborn dreamers. He thought of all the humans who had lived and died in the millennium since his sacrifice, each one adding their light to the fire. "We are just getting started," he said, echoing his words from so long ago. "Wait until you see what we do next." The guardians laughed, a wave of joy that rippled through the network and out into the universe. Stars seemed to burn brighter in response, planets spun a little faster, life flourished in places that had been barren for eons. The old hunger felt the change and retreated just a little into the depths of its prison. It was still there, still waiting, still hungry. But it was no longer inevitable. The seal would hold, strengthened by the love and defiance of beings who refused to accept the darkness. In a small village on a terraformed moon, a child looked up at the stars and asked her grandmother about the guardians. The old woman smiled and told her the story that had been passed down through generations, the story of Captain Marcus Cole and his defiance. "Are they still out there?" the child asked. "They are," the grandmother replied. "They are watching over all of us, feeling our happiness and our sadness, our victories and our defeats, and they are proud of us, little one, so proud." The child nodded solemnly. "When I grow up, I want to be a guardian too." "Perhaps you will," the grandmother said. "Perhaps someday you will add your light to theirs. But for now, the best thing you can do is live fully and bravely and kindly. That is what gives them strength. That is what pushes back the darkness." In the heart of Terminus, Marcus felt the child's words, felt her determination and her hope. He smiled, and the stars smiled with him. The universe was vast and cold and filled with dangers beyond imagination. But at its heart, protected by the love of countless guardians, there was a warmth that could never be extinguished. Humanity had defied a black hole. They had transformed fear into triumph, darkness into light, sacrifice into glory. And they were just getting started. The story would continue, passed down through the ages, inspiring each new generation to reach for the stars. It would become myth and legend and something more, a promise that no matter how dark the night, the dawn would always come. Because that was what humanity did. They faced the impossible, laughed at the odds, and made the universe a little brighter simply by refusing to give up. The Guardians watched and waited and loved. And the darkness retreated before them, as it always would. Forever,